Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J Moore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your questions for our guest or me into the comment box, and you'll see me turn my head from time to time and check and see what they might be. Today's guest is Jeremy Scheck, aka at ScheckEats, who throughout social media has accumulated an internet cooking phenom who now at the ripe old age, I believe is 23, has been featured in numerous publications, People, The Today Show, BBC Radio, BuzzFeed, Tasty USA Today. He's a recent graduate of Cornell University with a double major in Spanish and Italian and side courses in food science. His first cookbook, Cooking Smarter, Friendly Recipes with a Side of Science, launches October 31st, can be pre-ordered right now. Let's welcome Jeremy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure to have you here on the show, Jeremy. I'm excited to talk to you. Other than doing this show today, what's on your plate for the day?
Um, for today, I'm actually going to go to a restaurant opening in Manhattan and probably just try to get some more work done, maybe film another recipe video.
Well, I'm so excited to talk to you because there's so much to you at such a ripe young age. Having an advanced copy of Cooking Smarter, Friendly Recipes with a Side of Science, and perused it, actually really dug in. I feel you wrote the cookbook with all the elements you wished you could have found on bookshelves. Minimum equipment, no crazy ingredients. Tell us more.
Yeah, I think that is something that, like any person who collects cookbooks, I'm always comparing the different features that they have. And I used to go to the used book festival at my high school and buy as many cookbooks as possible. And whenever I noticed an interesting feature, like a way to write out the dietary restrictions or index things in a certain way, it's always things that I was like, oh, if I ever got to write a cookbook, like that's how I would do it. And then, yeah, the idea of the minimal ingredients came from, I had this idea when I was in college and I had a very limited budget. I did not have a lot of time. And so I wanted to pick recipes that would, not necessarily like a 5-ingredient recipe, because I think sometimes that gets too dogmatic. Like, okay, now I
Right.
can only use these specific ones. But if I just picked the sort of quintessential ingredients that I'm always going to have on hand, and then build from there. And a lot of recipes are only going to use the staples. And then some recipes are going to be staples with one other ingredient, and some might have a couple more. But in general, there's nothing that's like going to be impossible to source. And usually I also give lots of suggestions on alternatives as well.
The one of the things I found fascinating, there are a couple things that you addressed in the book. You said um, that most cheese is vegetarian, and most people wouldn't understand that. Can you give a little bit of insight to that?
Yeah, so basically it gets into the idea of what animal rennet is. So most cheese is vegetarian because since the 90s, most cheese is now made with what's called vegetable rennet, but is really called fermentation produced chymosin. And it is a microbial rennet that is used to separate the curds and whey and make your cheese. Um, and that's a lot cheaper. It was actually the first genetically modified ingredient that was approved in the U.S., and it was made by Pfizer. Um, but if you look at most kind of heritage cheeses, especially European cheeses, anything that has sort of a history, they're not made with that. They're made with animal rennet. And I think it calls into an interesting question of, is it vegetarian because it comes from the lining of a calf or a baby animal's stomach? It's enzymes from that. And I think it is really philosophical because it's not meat. Like, enzymes are kind of like juices that are in the stomach. So I've met vegetarians that will not eat animal rennet, and I've also met vegetarians that will. It's also interesting if you think about it in the context of like kashrus, and like my book, I don't keep kosher, but I think from what I found in general, it is considered dairy because basically no cheese would have ever been kosher until 1990 if they didn't consider the animal rennet to be part of itself or dairy.
Well, you know, the book, let me hold it up because I'm really enjoying it.
Thank you.
Everybody, you can pre-order. You can just go to his website, ScheckEats.com, and TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, ScheckEats. It's that simple. But in the back, I found that you had recipes by diet. I'm not sure I can find it here, but when I say that, you break it down, all the recipes in the cookbook. In the back is an index. Is it vegan? Is it vegetarian? Is it dairy-free? Is it gluten-free? Or it includes all the staples that you suggest to keep a simplified staple pantry. But it's still quite wonderful. And I like that. So as a cookbook junkie and experienced in cookbooks, I'm still learning things from you, the little baby of 23, that you're teaching. So this book is a great book for a beginner. It has a lot of information, recipes that we know and have fallen in love with, and you've just sort of updated them, like the Coca-Cola brisket, chicken and apricots, etc. I want to go to some of your background because I find you fascinating. Elementary school, you went to a school that taught in Spanish.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. So it was a public magnet program in Montgomery County, and it was funny because my older brother was on the wait list for it in kindergarten, and he went to the regular public kindergarten for a month and made all of his friends, and then a month in got off the wait list, and my mom took him out and put him in the Spanish school. And once you have one sibling in there, all of your siblings can go. I'm one of 4 brothers, and we all had the same kindergarten teacher, actually. And it was just really a wonderful experience, like learning Spanish from the age of 5. And because my school was in Spanish, I learned to read and write in Spanish first and do math. It really has like enriched the rest of my life so far. I mean, I got to be an au pair in Spain, and I think it would have been really hard if I didn't already speak Spanish. And I ended up getting a degree in Spanish and adding Italian, which I don't think I would have been able to learn as well without Spanish. And so it's just really developed a lifelong interest for me.
When you went to Cornell, you double majored and the side of food science. When you went there, was there a goal for your future when you're doing that? What did you expect?
Yeah, so it changed a little bit over the course of my college experience. I originally applied for school to be a food science major, and that's what I was accepted for. But early on, I was a little frustrated with the lack of flexibility in the food science schedule. I loved the food science classes, but to actually get that degree, there was a lot of organic chemistry and physics and stuff that has nothing to do with food. Like, I'm sure it would be somewhat helpful to know that stuff, but I took general chemistry, which is like the pre-med chemistry. I took general biology, and those were enough prerequisites to take pretty much all the food classes I wanted to. And so I decided to switch to become a Spanish major. I added the Italian, and even doing those, I had time to take more food-related classes than language classes. And it was just really fun. I took a dairy study trip to Italy where we learned about cheese production and dairy farming, and horticulture classes and wines and nutrition. So it was really just the best educational experience. Going in, it was more simple. I wanted to be a food scientist. And then my sophomore year, I had an internship lined up at Italy to do a social media sort of marketing internship there. And I also worked at Cornell Hillel and ran the social media for a couple years. So that was sort of where I thought I was going with it. I had my food blog, and so I thought maybe I would end up in some sort of marketing job. But the pandemic hit, and then my social media took off, and I was able to finalize my book contract my senior year of college, the first semester. So I never looked for a normal job after that, and I got really lucky in that regard.
So right now, ScheckEats is keeping the roof over your head.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I know you started in a bakery when you were around 15 and you were developing recipes. What people don't understand, you might do a 30-second video, but how much time went into doing that 30-second video? Take us through the process.
Well, I like to sometimes compare making the video to the same thing not making the video. So a lot of times there's going to be work ahead of time, like testing a recipe or coming up with it and doing research on that. But that's going to be the same whether I'm filming it or not. And then I usually think that filming it adds about 30% more time to it, just because I do have to start and stop a little bit. I have lights and camera equipment that I'm sort of bending over and trying to avoid. And then because I do short form videos, the editing doesn't take me so long. Like I probably spend maybe 20, 30 minutes on it. But I think that if you are making like a 10-minute video, that just goes exponentially up because the amount of footage that you have to be like watching and making sure is perfect is so much more.
What were, most people had inspiration from family about cooking. Was your mother a good cook? I know your grandmothers are involved and mentioned in the book, your grandfathers, your mother, your father. Is there just one in the family that was the food inspiration?
I wouldn't say there was one person specifically overall. I mean, I think that my dad's mom is probably the most made the biggest impact because she really is our family's recipe developer before me, and she has written hundreds of recipes, and I love learning from her. And I have a book idea to write another one that's kind of based on her recipe specifically. But my mom cooked, pretty much 3 meals a day my entire childhood. And she's less passionate about it, but she's very competent and had 4 kids. And it was just a big part of our lives growing up. And my dad is a completely incompetent cook, but he shares my love for food. And we're the type of people who are like planning the next meal while we're eating the current meal, which my mom cannot relate to. So yeah, it's a little bit of everyone.
Yeah, I think in the book you said that at some point you have to chase your father out of the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he likes to hang. Yeah. You're very lucky to have had the family table. and your mother cooking for you. Very lucky. Even if it was basic, and I would understand 3 meals a day for 4 boys. She
No, I'm
gets
so lucky.
more than one gold star, that's for sure. Um, what 3 ingredients or tools do you feel are a must-have?
Okay, so one of my favorite tools is a Danish dough whisk. And I think it's really awesome because basically it is like a flat whisk and it doesn't have like, it's not balloon at all. And it's more stiff. And so you can use it to replace a hand mixer in a lot, or a stand mixer in a lot of recipes. It's really hard to cream butter with a normal whisk or with a spoon, but it's a great shortcut. I'm all about doing stuff by hand if possible, and it just, things don't get stuck in it. It's strong enough. I think it's so underrated. Another piece of equipment that I really prefer for baking, I'm really passionate about weighing your ingredients for baking. Now, I have metric and imperial measurements in my book, and they've been tested both ways. But I actually think it's so much easier to use a scale. You don't have to dirty a bunch of measuring cups because you can just put everything directly into the bowl and zero it out or tear it. And
Yeah.
so it's so much more exact also because volume measurements are using volume to estimate mass. But if the density is off on the flour, it can really vary by a lot. So
Yeah.
I
Some people scoop up the flour and level it off, other ones spoon it in. And yeah, it's crazy. I eventually got a scale and I dropped it and broke it, and I was very sad and went and got another one. But yeah, I find that a whole lot easier. And you can find them at Walmart, people. It's really worth it. Really, really, really. Um, okay. In the book, your goal is to offer building blocks of culinary literacy. How did you affect that or put that into play?
Yeah, I wanted my book to be appealing to a range of skill levels. I wanted it to be approachable to a complete beginner, but hopefully still interesting to someone who is an avid home cook. So I think culinary literacy is basically understanding why you're doing what you're doing, which is why I have sections like flavorful braising and the way I write my recipes. I want it to be clear that you might be making this Coca-Cola braised brisket, and that is one specific recipe. But if you understand why each of the steps work and the way that they work and what you're doing at each step, you can realize that you don't have to use Coca-Cola. You don't have to use these seasonings. You don't even have to use brisket. You can just use whatever braising cut that you would like. And I want people to be able to cook the delicious recipes that are in here, but also feel confident enough to kind of make things up for themselves.
I was fascinated in looking at your TikTok and looking how it grew. Now you're at 2.1 million followers on TikTok, which means how did you react? Because I know there's a great number of your recipes that have had over 1 million views. What was the first recipe that hit 1 million views?
Huh. I'm trying to think. It was one of my, actually it wasn't a recipe, but one of my earliest, most popular videos was explaining something called mantecatura, which is a technique in Italian cooking that applies to making pasta or risotto. And it's basically when you are almost done, it brings everything together and like marries the sauce with the carb. And so you add a little bit of cheese and a little bit of butter or olive oil, and you mix really vigorously, and it gets the starches and the fats to all be really glossy and cohesive. And I made a video about that, explaining why a lot of times it feels like your restaurant pasta why is it so much better than when I make it at home. And I think a lot of home cooks don't mix the sauce with the pasta to begin with. They just kind of have it separately and it clumps up, and then they put the sauce on top. And I feel strongly that for most dishes it's better to mix it. And so I think that was one of the earliest ones.
And that's basically what the meaning is, mounting the items on top of each other. Am I correct? The butter.
I think it has to do more with the butter, and the fat is like the root of it.
And the pasta water, absolutely. Yeah. A lot of just tell everybody, ScheckEats, go there on his website, and you can see there's like these top recipes. The crispy potato recipe, that got you what? That was on the Today Show. Kylie Jenner liked it. Spicy rigatoni. These recipes just make sense in a very short period of time, and then you can follow up and find the recipes online, or a lot of them are in the book and they could be handy for you. There's a sense of joy that I get out of your book, your sense of humor. You really tease your brothers in the book, and the inside cover, in talking about products, you said something about why brown butter comes from brown cows. You were answering that question. Same ones that make milk chocolate, of course, which was just hysterical.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I just wanted to be a little tongue-in-cheek with some of this stuff. And, I thought this is my opportunity to invoke my sense of humor. And yeah.
I know I'm scooting around, but I was typing notes here and there. So you worked at Williams-Sonoma when you were a teenager doing cooking demos. Am I correct?
Yeah, so there were two parts to that. When I was a proper teenager in high school, I did some demos. It was not like I was an employee. And they always kind of said, like, when you turn 18, like, come back and get a job. And so I did, and I worked there a few seasons.
Oh, great. Because they are a number of the Williams-Sonomas, I think, in the Jersey, New York area, are having a ticketed event to come meet you. And to go to the website ScheckEats will give you, he's on book tour, East Coast, West Coast, and you're doing one in DC for Politics and Prose with Aviva Goldfarb on November 5th at 3 p.m. And that's a free event. Some of the events are ticketed but include the book. You're basically getting the book and getting it autographed. And then really, you're going to be at the New York City Y, 92nd Street with Bobby Flay. And he brought you up. There was was it the Food Network? Where did he do? There was a thing he brought you to the attention of people.
I think it was on CBS News, and it was totally unexpected and so nice of him to even think of me. And yeah.
Let me hold the book up again. There's just so many beautiful photographs that you did in the book. I don't know. I'm swinging to a page. Here we go. What do we have here?
Oh, that's one of my favorite pictures.
Yeah, that is the apple pie oatmeal, and I think he just reposted that video. And Griffin, who's our producer, he opened up and he saw that the squash soup. He says, that looks good. And I said, yeah, you're roasting everything. It's one of the smaller squashes. You believe in not having to peel things. So it was the squash, the onions, everything in a roasting pan, roasted till it's soft. Then you could take the skin off the garlic, puree it, and then add your creams, whatever. I'm really shortening in the 30 seconds. But, he was hungry. He came on. He wants to go eat now. I don't blame him. I can go on and on. I know that you have a lot of things going on and I need to let you go, but I do have these questions I ask at the end of the show. And I hope you're ready for them. You've been advised they're coming. What was the best bite you had all week?
Okay, the other day I had, it was like a swirl soft serve, and one of the flavors was blood orange sorbet, and the other was like a Tahitian vanilla ice cream, and it was like the best creamsicle I've ever had in my life, basically.
I was going to say it sounded like an orange creamsicle. Absolutely. And I asked this question, so there's not many years difference when I have my guests. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be? And we're only talking 5 years, but I think that there's a lot that you've learned in the past 5 years. What would you say to your 18-year-old self? What piece of advice would you give her?
Well, I don't know how applicable this is to everyone else, but I would say don't go skiing because I got a bad concussion skiing, and it made things kind of harder for a while. So it's a little bit personal, but
That's okay.
I kind of wish I was warned.
Look, who knows? Somebody might be listening and saying, well, maybe I shouldn't go skiing.
It's
Maybe, who
dangerous.
knows?
I was wearing a helmet too.
Yeah. If you wake up tomorrow with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
I wish I could speak every language.
Well, a good start. Anything else? Do you do anything French?
I can understand a lot of French. I was just there, but I find the pronunciation pretty hard. And yeah, but I can read it pretty well and I can understand it pretty well. But I don't. It's hard enough to keep up with Spanish and Italian and English without losing them. So I think adding another thing seriously into the mix would make everything that a little bit worse, I think.
Okay. Just counting down here. What didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
Not to say that you probably should have, but one thing that I'm really proud about the book is that I photographed it myself. And also my grandma did the illustrations.
And I like those. They're really cute. Were they watercolors?
Yes.
I'm just taking watercolor painting up, so I appreciate it maybe a little bit more. And it's been a joy. I'm just curious where you see yourself in 5 years. Where do you want to be in 5 years?
I would love to be able to just keep writing cookbooks. It truly is my dream job. I can't believe I get paid to do this. And I would love to go on a trajectory if I could have a career anywhere similar to like the Barefoot Contessa or Melissa Clark. I would be so psyched to be able to do something like that.
Well, I think you're on the right path. You have the followers. You're attuned to what's going on today with social media and working with that and being an influencer and growing that as a business. And I wish you all the best. I'm sure it's going to come to you. I thoroughly enjoy your book. And for everybody, we're going to just sit here and remind them the name of the book is Cooking Smarter by Jeremy Scheck. Friendly recipes with a side of science. October 31st, it ships. You can pre-order. There's a million places. Target. Where else is it? Target, of course, Amazon. Okay.
Oh, it's also, Sorry, I'm getting some feedback. It's also on Barnes and Noble and any sort of normal book retailer is possible.
Well, I want to thank you. All the best. Look up the book tour, everybody, West Coast, East Coast, on Jeremy's ScheckEats.com. All the best to you, Jeremy.
Thanks so much.
Okay, everyone, my food tidbit of the week. Bruce Weinstein and Mark Scarborough, they have a podcast, Cooking with Bruce and Mark. In fact, Bruce was on the show. They just released, Jeremy, listen to this, their 39th cookbook, the Look and Cook Air Fryer book, 700 recipes with photos. Check out Jay Moore's Facebook page and website for previous interviews with Bruce Weinstein and learn a little bit more about what they do. Next week's guest is Maya Kamal. Her original refrigerated sauces were enthusiastically received by New York City specialty stores, and over the years, her line has evolved to include simmer sauces, dals, chanas, rice, and condiments. Before her product line, she was the photo editor for Savour magazine. She was inspired to delve into culinary arts. Her first cookbook, Savoring the Spice Coast of India, Fresh Flavors from Kerala, won the Julia Child Cookbook Award. Now with her third cookbook, just released, Indian Flavor, Everyday, Simple Recipes and Smart Techniques to Inspire. You have seen her products on the shelves in all the leading grocery stores, the most amazing packaging, quality products. So I look forward to you joining us next Thursday when Maya Kamal is on the show. Monthly, Jay Moore is giving away $50 gift cards to some of your favorite local restaurants. Visit jmooreliving.com/contest to enter to win. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at my email, which is food@jmooreliving.com, or my Instagram @DaraCooks. All shows are immediately archived in video form on Jay Moore's Facebook and jmooreliving.com. Feel free to dig into our video archives of past shows. We truly appreciate when you share our show with friends and family. May your plates always, always remain full. I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Have a good week.